This episode of the Tome Show is brought to you by listeners like you. Thank you to our patrons at patreon.com/the Tome Show. Welcome to the Tome, a D&D news, reviews, and interviews show, and I'm your Tome host, Jeff Greiner.
And I'm Tracy Hurley, and in this episode, number 403, we're going to turn the stone as we look at the 2024-25 version of the Monster Manual in part 23 of the series.
It is dangerous, in fact, to look at certain things because they will turn you to stone, as we will discover. Joining us for this episode is the Mephit of the Tome Show. Brandes Stoddard comes to us from Dimension 20, Worlds Beyond Number, and other things, as well as being a Tome Show regular and a well-known elemental trickster.
That's all correct. I ran a campaign called Dust to Dust, so I guess it's right there.
There you go. And not joining us in this episode, unfortunately, is Jared, who is in the middle of a big storm going through his area and lost power tonight, so he wasn't able to join us, which means I don't get to read off my extremely well-crafted Little Mermaid joke that I was going to make.
And while Brandes might be a trickster, we are not tricking you that we're still talking about the latest Monster Manual. D&D 5e got an update in 2024, and we're doing a monster by monster dive into this book. So to get us started, it's disclosure time. None of us here have purchased the book as far as I know, but we did definitely get review copies.
No. Our reviewer with integrity who purchased the book is not with us.
Well, in fairness, I did pay for one of the two books that I'm using tonight, just not the 5.5 Monster Manual.
I don't think I paid for either of them. The 5 or the 5.5. I
was not yet anywhere near receiving review copies in 2014.
Yeah. I was getting review copies in 2014, but I have stopped getting review copies the last year or two. So.
Yeah, big same.
So I wonder if they're just not doing review copies as much anymore, or we're not lovable. That's what I hear. So we're starting with the most lovable of monsters. It's the Medusa.
Yeah.
Medusa, if people don't know, it's weird that you're playing D&D and don't know the Medusa. It is a traditionally a woman, although in the 2024, 25, we have depictions of male Medusae in the mix here too, with snakes for hair who stare at you and turn you to stone, made famous by Greek mythology. Did I get any of that wrong?
No, I think the three of us and the majority of our listeners are all going to be aware that the Greek mythic Medusa was an individual.
It was an individual monster who then got turned into a category of monster.
That's right.
And it's interesting because in the 5.5 version of the Monster Manual, and it's interesting that like when we started the series, we weren't calling it 5.5; it was 2024 Monster Manual. But WotC has sort of embraced the 5.5 nomenclature, so that is becoming more common as we've gone on. But in the 5.5 version of the Monster Manual, they explicitly call out that they sometimes recruit servants that are immune to being petrified, like gargoyles and gorgons. And that's interesting because gorgon was the name of the type of creature that Medusa was, and Medusa was the individual. And now in D&D, a gorgon is instead this bull thing, and Medusa are this whole species of snake-headed creatures.
I do think they're all just very misunderstood. They're actually Bob Dylan fans, right? Because everybody must get stoned.
Yeah, that sounds accurate.
It's just folk music, guys. You gotta chill out.
I do really enjoy the upgrade to the art for the Medusa in 5.5. Not only do we have the depiction of both male and female Medusae, but they've really sort of embraced this. It's an almost like Egyptian aesthetic to them, whereas before it was leaning more into like the Greek, since that's the sort of the origins.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah, they're kind of dance, and you got two very different styles of snake hair. Um, the woman's got really long snakes and just a few of them, whereas the guy has a lot of shorter snakes, and they've got this like obsidian almost looking skin. Like they've gone like stone like looking flesh on Medusa for a little bit now. Um, but it was used in the, like if you look at 2014, it's sort of a gray, stony looking flesh, whereas now it looks like a smooth black sort of onyx or something, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I I do like that a lot. Um, so I mean, as with everything, the lore is boiled way down.
Hmm.
There wasn't a huge pile of lore before, but there's less now.
Yeah. Although we do have the Medusa fates, like there's the D6 chart of how did this Medusa come into being, and it acknowledges like some Medusa are born, but also some of them are created through curses, and here's some examples of what those curses might be.
Yeah, yeah. And I like those a lot, even if it, means that a lot of campaigns are going to have sort of their own Medusa lore, because you're probably not going to encounter a ton of Medusa. Like it, it's sort of such a specific encounter gimmick that even two in a campaign is a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
I'm trying to think in my fifth edition play, we've definitely run into Medusa before, but I don't know that. Well, I think maybe only one of them was actually a combatant. Just
hmm.
as often you run into Medusa and they're just like intelligent NPCs you have a conversation with and try to, not have them turn you to stone.
Yep. And we for sure had one that we fought in Tomb of Annihilation, because she sure turned my character to stone.
Okay. I'm
Uh,
trying to remember. Was it in the actual dungeon?
no. This
Okay.
is in the city outside the dungeon.
And that's why we didn't run into it, because I basically just ran the dungeon of that
Oh,
adventure.
right.
Um,
Yeah, they'll do it.
yep. There's one in Phandelver Below that
Hmm.
uh, started off as a social encounter and turned into a fight for my group. So, how does the new version of the Medusa compare to the 2014 version of the Medusa? I'm mostly seeing similarities.
Well, so there's one big one. It's the same big one as the basilisk, right? Um, the petrifying gaze is something that the Medusa actively uses rather than something that kind of passively happens.
Yep.
Um, so it's
It,
moved from straight down to bonus action.
yeah, it was just an always on, and now it's a bonus, and it's a recharge bonus action. So it might happen more than once in a fight, but it probably won't happen more than twice.
It'd be pretty unlikely for it to happen more than twice.
Yeah.
And you know, like I'm saying, it's kind of such a specific gimmick that um, I'm not sure how much you'd want it to happen more than about once.
No, but the previous version of the petrifying gaze functioned like evokes the myth of the Medusa from
Oh,
Greek
for sure.
mythology a lot better.
Well, much like the basilisk,
Yeah.
this version of the action um, totally has no narrative connection to like how this works in myth. It is very much more the Medusa decides to stare at something. There's nothing they can do about it other than roll their save. There's no mirror or averting your gaze or any of that. No, like that's what bothers me, right? Because uh, like the classic myth is of Perseus really centers this is an overwhelming problem that he has to solve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not, well, I'm just going to run in, hope I pass my saves, and kill the thing.
Right. And it was
or have to stay beyond 30 feet the whole fight.
And it was an aura before, like it was anybody within 30 feet of the Medusa before. Now it's a cone as well. So suddenly,
Right.
suddenly facing exists and matters when you're fighting Medusa.
I mean, facing always existed for cones. That's cones for you.
Yes, but it didn't apply to the petrifying gaze because it wasn't a cone.
Yes, right.
So
Yeah.
And I don't know, like it. The new
and
Medusa.
there's no fail by 5 situation to instantly petrify.
Yeah, so the petrifying gaze has had a significant nerfing, if you will, and like the normal attacks. First of all, apparently Medusa don't use weapons anymore. It's claw attacks and a magical poison ray attack instead of a longbow and a short sword, which that's largely an aesthetic difference. The damage is increased a little bit, but I don't know honestly that the damage is increased to the point that it makes up for how much the petrifying gaze is weaker.
Right. The idea of the old petrifying gaze, though, was that probably a lot of parties didn't even need to roll saves. They just spent all of their time attacking at disadvantage.
Mm-hmm. Which
Uh,
makes the Medusa a lot harder to kill.
It makes it harder to kill, but also zeroes out the damage comp of petrified and brings it down to basically poisoned. Oh, brings it down to blinded, I should say. Really brings it down to blinded.
Sure.
Right? Because averting your eyes had all of the effects of the blinded condition.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I can basically promise what happened was a conversation that amounted to, well, we're not getting the power level throughput that we expect from Petrified. We need to make Petrified happen and not blinded. Otherwise, we should just have the blinded condition here.
I suppose because now you can't avoid the gaze.
Right.
You can't take on the blinded.
You can kind of avoid the gaze by staying outside of 30-foot range. Right.
Or staying outside of the cone.
Well, since you can't control the targeting of its cone very well. And, it always was about that 30-foot range. So it's sort of, I guess it's good to be a warlock with Eldritch Blast. Good game.
Right. And just constantly push it away.
Right. Push it away, kite it, whatever.
Yeah. The petrifying gaze still comes off as worse, but I guess there is some trade-off in that there's not just I can avert my gaze, take disadvantage, and blind myself or whatever to avoid it entirely, because now it's just no, it's going to hit you. Now you just got to make a save.
Yeah, I very much like to sort of focus more on the combat narrative than making absolutely sure that things get their combat value throughput onto the table. That's me.
No, I think I agree that this tells a less interesting story.
Yep. It's exactly the same thing we said about the basilisk.
Yeah.
And I mean, I honestly feel more intensely about the Medusa and the basilisk because the Medusa's story is one I know better.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's interesting that the new Medusa gets an increase in most things. Like the initiative is a little bit better. The initiative is significantly better. The to hit modifier is a little bit better. The damage is a little bit better. Although the save DC for the petrifying gaze is worse.
Yep, that's all true.
It also has fewer. it doesn't have it's not proficient in insight anymore.
That's weird.
But they learned a new language, which I guess
Sure.
matters. Yeah. I guess in my head, the Medusa it may list common, but my Medusa always just spoke whatever language I needed them to speak, whatever made sense narratively. They're intelligent creatures.
Sure, and there aren't that many cases where that isn't common.
No, but if they're from a specific region or whatever, they might know a regional language or whatever. So
Yeah.
All right. Anything else on Medusa?
No, I'm set.
All right. Then let's talk about mephits. Mephits, if people don't know, are elemental imps. They literally are described as imp-like creatures in the 2014 version of the entry. But they kind of look like imps. They got the bat-like wings and the long hooked noses, and the artwork is basically like what if imp but made out of lava or dust or whatever. It's interesting to me how many planar areas have imp-like creatures. Mephits in the elemental planes, imps obviously, and then quasits are all sort of filling the same role.
Right. Well, and I don't think you have to squint that hard to get to, oh, this is just the body shape of a winged kobold.
Oh no, I could see that.
Um,
But yeah, so mephits are little imp-like trickster creatures from the elemental planes, but none of them are like straight up. It's not like fire and earth and whatever. It's dust and ice and magma and mud and smoke.
That makes them the paras, the para elementals, not the quasis. Anyway,
because they're all mixes of the four elements. So dust is air and earth and et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, I would find no problem with having fire, water, earth, air, like ooze, lightning, sort of just complete rounding, finish on rounding it out with sort of, yeah, this is, a little bit of mischief manifests in the elemental planes in some form or other. This is just what it do. But
it is interesting. Has fifth edition ever really talked about the para elemental planes, or is this like the main way that we recognize they still exist?
I think they get name checked in the DMG at some point, but I don't have the DMG in front of me to confirm that. So I'm going to go on. I think that's right.
One of the key features of the mephits mechanically is they basically, I think, all have some sort of death burst and some sort of breath weapon, I think.
Yep.
So they can all breathe something at you, and when they die, they all explode into various effects.
Yep.
And it looks like that holds true.
Yeah, and that's sort of been true about them for a long time because their narrative role and combat narrative have both been very steady. And they're fun little no guilt stabbings. They're out to get you, and they're gonna blow up when they die. So you can stab them all you want. It's inconvenient. You might get hurt, but you can stab them.
Right.
But I also sort of feel better about it because they're so obviously not biological, right? They're not, getting ice cream on the weekends with their mephit kids.
Right. Well, mephit's got to procreate somehow, right?
That is absolutely not correct. No, they do not have to. They can just manifest out of elemental nonsense. It's fine.
Fine.
But like, I think most GMs have a pretty good time with the kind of um, fairly campy method presentation because they do want to talk to you and kind of mess with you a little bit
Right.
before we get down to the scrap, and uh, they get blown up like a tiny stick of dynamite.
Yep.
Um,
But they seem to mostly be very similar. There's a few instances, like I'm looking at the magma method, where they've lost their ability to innately cast heat metal. But there's
I
other
mean,
cases where they've
yeah,
maintained their spell casting because all of them have like one spell that they can cast in the previous edition or in 5.
yeah. I mean, the thing about heat metal is that that spell, especially in 5.0, is super rude,
Yeah,
and it's a lot of guaranteed damage because no immediate save.
but they're not alone. Like the ice method also lost the ability to cast fog. Oh no, it still casts fog cloud. So far it's just the magma method that lost its spell
Yeah.
casting. Did it gain anything to make up for that?
Uh,
Or did they just figure the old magma method was too powerful and this balanced the scales?
Unclear.
Because let's see, the others? Mud methods don't have a spellcasting thing. They have false appearance, which instead
Uh,
of false appearance, they just have proficiency in stealth now.
they gained 1 average point of fire damage on their claw. They lost 4 hit points. I mean, we're holding pretty steady here overall,
Hmm.
but
Smoke methods lost the ability to cast dancing lights for some reason.
it was overpowered, obviously.
Sure, it was. I think mostly because it never came up. Probably
Right.
it never came up, so you might as well make the stat block shorter.
I would almost guarantee they got cut for, are these column missions accomplishing anything? No? Cool, bye.
Although, I mean, I could see a world where they're in the smoke and they're creating little lights to confuse people or make you think there's a will-o-wisp around or whatever. But for the most part,
Yeah, yeah. I do agree with that. Just uh, s- until they're going to sort of explain setting that scene up, I'm not sure that enough GMs sort of put that narrative together in their heads. If it works for your table, God bless you. Have fun.
the Steam method went from being able to innately cast blur to just having blur on it all the time.
Right, that's absolutely a please don't use a round of combat casting blur in the Steam method.
Right. And before it was only doing it once a day. Now it's just always on.
The real difference in combats is pretty thin. When was the last time you encountered the same method twice in one
Oh,
day,
sure,
not having killed it the first time?
I suppose. But to make up for having been now just being permanently blurred all the time, they did lose 4 hit points.
Yeah.
So, did they all lose some hit points? The smoke method lost a lot of hit points. 9.
And that is a lot of hit points at this very small number of hit points.
Mud method lost
Uh,
14.
yeah. And,
That could be good.
that all seems a bit of a shame to me, but okay, whatever.
I
I'm
mean,
sure there's a reason for it that I just don't.
they're CR like 1/4 or 1/2, and before they in 5 they all had very similar hit points. They were within like a few points of each other, even though they
Yeah.
ranged in CR. And now I think the range in hit points matches the range in CR a little bit more.
Yeah.
The things that are CR 1/2 have 20-ish hit points, and the things that are CR 1/4 have in the low teens.
Uh, Something I've talked about with monster design in some other contexts. Um, you know, these guys are sort of statted to have sort of two big moments in any fight. Their claw situation is never going to do a ton of damage. It's just not.
No.
But they want to get in there, try to deal some area damage with their breath weapon, and then blow up.
Yep.
right? They're little walking bombs, and I I would be fairly sympathetic to a GM that, you know, added to Death Burst the option for the monster to just trigger whenever they were damn well pleased. That sort of feels like the way a bunch of the uh, you know, weird ghosts in sort of Beetlejuice aesthetic, because their faces here remind me of Beetlejuice. Is where this is coming
Okay.
from. Like what Janet Davis's character, her face gets stretched into. I think it's her, Alec Baldwin. I don't remember. You know the scene I'm talking about, though. The stretching of the face reminds me of their faces. So I'm sort of imagining, well, weird explodey spirits in um, Beetlejuice would probably have the ability to like light their own fuse and blow up when it was funny
Sure they could.
and not when you killed them.
Yeah, and I don't know that I've ever run into a Mephit before. They usually come in groups of, 2 to 6
Yeah.
when I've seen them in encounters, and that at least gives them a little more staying power. It's all the more interesting if they're not. They do tend to be immune to their own kind of damage, but it is interesting to find things like that aren't immune to their own damage, so they can chain react a little bit.
Yep.
I did that in a little side quest I made in Phandelver and Below, where they ran into mutated psychic sheep that had a psychic scream and were not immune to their own psychic damage. So one of them freaked out and screamed, and it made all of them blow up.
Oh.
Anyway, anything else on methods?
Is it normal for languages to have these more individual ones? So it's primordial and then like Aquan and Oron.
Yeah.
And it used to not be primordial in 2014, but I don't think I've ever seen those languages before. So is it really only for them?
No. So those are the
Oh, okay.
elemental languages. And it's actually one of the things I like about how the way they're listing them, because it was annoying in previous editions, at least 5, and I think before that even, that there was Aquan and Ignan and Orin and whatever the other one is. One Terran, yeah, one for each element. And there was also Primordial, and it wasn't explicitly stated in very many places that those were related to each other. And so it's like, well, one of the languages listed in the player's handbook that a character could pick up is Primordial, but none of the creatures from the elemental planes had Primordial listed in their languages. They all had, Aquan or Terran or whatever. Now they're making it a little bit more clear that Aquan and Terran and Ignan and Orin are like dialects, I guess, of Primordial, making Primordial sort of a universal language for all of them.
Well, I was curious if that's what that was intended to mean, because otherwise it would be kind of funny to have a mixed group and then only some of them can speak to each other.
No, I think I think that's always been the intent, and I think one of the things I really like about 2024 is they're trying to make that more clear.
Yeah, you got that right. Like how that actually sounds, it's very hard for me to get a grip on, because Aqua needs to sound like the flowing of streams or waves, and Ignan needs to sound like the crackling of flames.
Yeah.
And those are dialects? Is that right?
Right.
But fine. It's fine.
It's one of those things where we hand wave a little bit what the language sounds like, so that we hand wave the specifics in order to make the game function better. So
Yes, correct.
all right. Well, then let's move on to Merfolk. The Merfolk had a bit of an expansion, which makes sense because we previously had just an entry for Merfolk, a CR1 8th Merfolk. and it's hard to imagine them being the protectors of explorers and the seas when they're relatively weak in an environment where krakens are swimming around.
When they're lower CR than a Mephit.
Right, exactly. Now we have the low CR Merfolk Skirmisher, but then we also have the Merfolk Wavebender, which is like a magical mer person that's CR6. So we've added a whole stat block that has magic. They've also transformed. They have a different origin. Our story of Merfolk is different now. They're no longer humanoids, they are elementals. Those decisions to change those origins have not hit the same for every creature, so I'm curious what we think about this change.
My main investment in Merfolk is from Under the Seas of Vidari.
Yeah, I was going to say you've played with this this idea a lot.
Yeah, and so like in basically no other setting have I cared a lot about Merfolk, except insofar as they might have a great singing voice and some sort of sea witch that was displeased about that fact. Like
that was the joke I was going to make if Jared was here.
Yeah, well, you're not gonna like ever gonna go get in a fight with a CR 1/8 Merfolk and feel cool about yourself. That's just not even on the table. You know what I mean? But they exist in that stat block situation so that you can fight alongside them against Sahuagin, in my opinion.
Sure.
But I think I've got some basis for this opinion. And for the creature of the facing page in 2014, and the overleaf page in 2024, the Mara.
Yeah.
Right? There's plenty of bad stuff in the ocean. I'm having a hard time sort of investing them being elementals at all, though. Like the point is very much that they're just ocean people, and they exist like ocean people with absolutely minimal change. Following that up with so cool, they're immune to charm person, hold person, all of this. But why? That's stupid.
Well,
so I don't like it.
Is it tied though to the? Did someone maybe just jump off because they have Aquan as a language? To then make them.
Humans can definitely learn Aquan. I guess they're elementals.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Right, but humans don't get that by default, right? Of course, humans can learn another language, but this is.
It is until we have a PC stat block for Merfolk, which we probably do in 2014. Not looking it up right now, and don't in 2024 because they're just sort of slow to update some of the stuff. We won't know if Merfolk just get primordial Aquan or if they have to learn it like anybody else, and it's just commonly passed down in their culture.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely an implication that they have some sort of tie to elemental water, thus the sort of species level familiarity with Aquan. And that makes like I can imagine if you're on the elemental plane of water that there would be merfolk swimming around. So I could see that. I don't know that it super matters to me whether they're humanoid or elemental, especially since I know enough as an experienced DM to just ignore that if it doesn't make sense for like the purposes of spells or whatever. Like I could still consider them to be a person for sleep or charm or whatever.
Right. The times when being a humanoid matters. Yeah, the DM can fix it, but I'm not clear what it gets what it gets WotC in making them elemental, right?
Nope.
Like,
well, I mean, but if you look at the Wavebender, which is the new thing for this, like they definitely leaned all in on that thematically. Start off with being able to breathe in water and air, like even in 2014, they had that connection to a primordial language, and then now they're doing elementalism, controlling the water and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I definitely agree they have all of that. I like the stat block of the Wavebender. Um, like I could have also justified all of these stats with Druid or Sorcerer.
Do we
If I want.
do we effectively have a species that has been a playable species in the past associated with each sort of planar alignment now? Like
Well, other than
lizard
Genasi?
folk are earth elemental people now, and
No, sure.
gnolls are infernal, and merfolk are plane of water. Like I wonder if they're doing something like that where there's like one species um, from each sort of plane.
Have they gone back to admitting that people want to play Knolls?
Shh. I'm
Hey,
building a
man.
theory here. Be quiet. It's interesting that the merfolk converting to merfolk skirmisher, very similar stats wise. They lost perception, but they added wisdom, which kind of gives them the same perception bonus. But their spear became a magical ocean spear, because everybody knows what an ocean spear is and why that makes sense. But it actually has some extra magical abilities, like they can throw it and it returns to their hands, and it has the effect of basically what is it, a freezing ray, and that it slows your
Well,
movement speeds and stuff.
I mean, it's a magical thing that they have and create because it's, what is it, Jeff?
It's
Not in
not
their gear.
lootable. Yeah, not lootable. There's no gear. Which in that situation, I don't hate that because I don't want to fight a whole flock of CR 1/8 merfolk and then have my PCs running around with 20 magical return to their hand freeze thing spears.
For sure. I just wouldn't have a problem saying that these NPCs have the ability to give their spears a cold damage aura. Anyway,
Yeah,
moving on.
yeah. No. So sometimes the lack of things being listed as gear bothers me, and sometimes it makes a lot of sense. This is one that makes sense to me. There are other ones that are like, that's silly. They just didn't list
Yeah.
it under gear for some reason. They came up with this innovation of we're going to list gear, and then just decided not to use it in places where it makes sense to use it sometimes. So, but yeah, Tracy was talking about our Wavebender merfolk. They're our spellcaster. I mentioned CR6. Interesting that they apparently go deeper into the ocean than the regular merfolk because they have resistance to cold, which the lower CR merfolk do not have. And they have aquatic burst attacks instead of a spear, and they cast some spells.
Sure.
And they effectively have a hellish rebuke, except it's a watery rebuke.
Sure. And it's pretty good damage and carries a rather nice push. So it's good for giving them a little more space to play with for their aquatic burst.
Yeah. One of
To
the
keep
things
doing.
one of the things I like about 5.5's Monster Manual is they're giving us a little bit more variation on a stat block. And so having a low CR merfolk and a CR6 merfolk, like I can tell more stories using merfolk now. And I
Sure.
feel like that's something that they did a lot of in fourth, that fifth didn't lean into nearly as hard. And there's a degree to which like an argument could be made that fourth went too hard in that direction. Um,
Right.
but
Um,
but fifth could have learned more and done more, and so I'm hoping that we continue to get more variations with time.
yeah, I agree with what I think you're basically saying. I'd love to see them not go as far as fourth, but like kind of straddle.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
there's some really great creatures, really great creatures that I absolutely love that show up. They're essentially like this thing is a cool body shape and very loose concept of monster. Uh, what if we tack on like 20 levels and see what cool adjective we apply to it?
Yeah.
And a lot of them are like, this is the chimera or whatever from this particular layer of the abyss. Oh, well, that's pretty sick, actually. Yeah, I love that. Um, the monster manuals just get really, really cool with that.
One or two stat blocks of Merfolk, I can run an encounter. I can design a pretty cool encounter. 4 or 5 stat blocks of Merfolk, I can imagine a society and base a campaign around it. But you don't need it. Like I mentioned recently in the Discord, I only just last week finished the 12 Days of Edition Wars, just 5 months after it was released. Um, and it made me think, man, did we need that many types of beholders in 4th edition? Almost certainly not, right? That is not a society that you need to imagine because they're not really the society sort of people. So you could go too
We're having
far.
fun with our next series. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, you can go too far, but for a species like Merfolk, like I wouldn't mind 4 or 5, and then I could really imagine building out something more interesting.
I'm going to resist getting pulled away in the argument about beholders, but what I would say about merfolk is um, they are people, and you can always bolt the basic merfolk, amphibious plus essential body shape onto any NPC stat block
That's true.
and have a pretty good time, frankly. Yeah,
No,
druid, nailed it. Let's
you
go.
could, you're
Right?
right. You could do that very easily. But it doesn't tell me, it doesn't inspire me about what their society looks like. I'm having to invent that and then find the
Right.
stat block to come up
Have I
with.
got a book for you, buddy? Have I got a book for you?
Oh, I have that book too.
Well, for any of our listeners who weren't around when I was hawking this book twice a day and 3 times on Sundays, let me tell you, Under the Seas of Adari, PDF still available on drive-through. Get after it.
Yeah, pairs nicely with
Um,
Seas of Adari, which is above the waves, and then Under the
it
Seas,
does
which is below
indeed.
the waves.
And you can still get hard copies of these by going to the Tribality store. Sean will be happy to ship you some and get them out of his garage.
There you go.
His wife will like it too.
I still have an outline for a whole campaign based in Vidari.
Nice. All
It
right.
is. I said at the time, it is one of the setting books that does the best job of just about any setting book I've ever seen of inspiring specific like stories and adventures. Like
I'm
every page you open, it's like, oh, I can see the adventure here.
I'm really, really glad that you feel that way. That was
Yeah,
really important to us.
yeah.
Um, so, we're ready to move on to the marrow?
Let's talk about Marrow instead of continuing to hawk books that you wrote 5 years ago.
That's right.
So the Marrow are
Uh,
like, what if merfolk but scary and evil?
yeah, that's nailed it.
Yep.
Um,
I find
and
it
their
interesting.
monstrosities, not elementals.
Yes, they're monstrosity. I find it interesting that 5.5 specifically describes them as ogrish undersea creatures, which
Huh.
evokes a different sort of thing for me. They're like, oh, they're. Do I think of them then as like the merfolk version of an ogre? Is that the implication? Because they're not big and hulking like an ogre is.
Um, I mean, they're large,
They are
right?
large.
So they're in that regard, they're kind of more hulking than a merfolk. Um, I, I I'm not gonna go hunt through my second ed books, but I do have a vague memory that second ed worked really hard to give us, and probably First Ed did this also, don't at me, worked really hard to give us like aquatic cognates of really a lot of surface world stuff. And I feel like they might have committed then to Marrow are pretty much sea ogres.
Yeah, and I
Which
mean, they explicitly describe them in 5.5. Vicious aquatic hunters, Marrow combine the features of ogres with primeval predatory fish.
yeah, I mean they aren't sort of extravagantly stupid like an ogre. They're intelligence 8 sort of uh, they're just sort of low information voters, I guess.
Well, and as is the case, right? We have a lot less lore in 5.5.
Very much.
5.0 tells the story of how they were actually theoretically Marrow originally were merfolk that were like transformed by demon princes and or perhaps Demogorgon himself and turned into the Marrow and then sent back to the world to wreak havoc. But you don't get any of that story in 5.5.
No, there's ultimately very little here beyond a basic they're predators of people anywhere near the coast. Cool, I guess.
Is there maybe just a hint of the previous? I guess maybe it's just saying that. So Sage's Trace, there's that quote for Leomund.
Oh,
that traces the Marrows to the something, and then depraved merfolk and worse.
so there is some
Aquatic.
implication that they are maybe derivatives of merfolk. Yeah, it's almost like the connection between orcs and elves in Middle Earth. Marrow are
Sure.
the same way with merfolk.
Well, right, and sort of that sense of things undersea can become corrupted in ways you don't even see on land is a fairly consistent story because of the way the Malenti infiltrate Sea Elf society. The Sahuagin that look like sea elves. That story goes way back in D&D.
Okay, so mechanically, they look very similar. They've got a little bit better decks.
They do, not that it changes anything, really.
No, because they're AC, and that may have been just to make the rest of the numbers actually work out mechanically in third edition simulation style.
Right. I mean, they're allowed to have scales that are 1 point just as well as they're allowed to have scales that are 3 points. Who cares? But it improves their deck saves is really the most salient thing.
And their initiative.
Yes, true.
Yep. And does it increase their their 2 hit modifiers are the same across the board, even with the higher
because they were using strength for their harpoon. Yeah.
For the harpoon. Yep. So they still do a bite and either a claw or a harpoon attack. There's a difference in that the bite now gives the poison condition. It does a little bit less damage, but it poisons. Other than that, they seem to be more or less the same mechanically.
Right, and hard to necessarily see why you'd use the claw if you had another option.
And I'm not okay. So here's a difference: the harpoon in 5 allowed them to pull. The idea is that they could harpoon somebody and then like pull them closer, like Scorpion style from Mortal Kombat.
Yep. Yep.
In 5, they could pull them 20 feet closer, but in 5.5, they can pull them 15 feet closer. And boy, that is splitting of hairs to the point that I don't know why they made that change.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also do not know what the rationale for that might have been.
Yeah, it's a weird. I mean, if it had been half as, if it had been 10 versus 20, I could see like, okay, that's a significant difference. 15 versus 20 is such a finite difference. I can't imagine that there's a mechanical formula for balance that led to that change. But I don't
Like,
know.
if you want me to backform something, I'm going to tell you that it's about the speed difference off of standing up from prone for most characters is 15 feet rather than, but I'm stretching here. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I don't actually believe that was necessarily like a design conversation that happened.
Right.
Um, I think I'm really stretching.
Should we move on to our next entry, which is our reminder of the episode that the organization of 2024 Monster Manual sucks?
Uh, yes, the mezzo soprano loft.
Yes, the Mesaloth. The Mesaloth is not our first Yugoloth. So Yugoloths are the neutral evil versions of demons and devils. Um, they're sort of the mercenaries of the Blood War. You could find them fighting with the devils. You could find them fighting against the devils, just depending on who offered them the best reward.
Yep,
The Mesaloths are they're like insectoid demon creatures,
yep. I mean, very much so.
and it is this point that because the organization sucks, I have to navigate all the way away from where I was on the other version to find how they compare. Yeah, they seem to be a little. I thought this was the case. They seem to be a little bit bulkier now than they were before, just in the artwork.
Yes, though I think that there could be some sort of you're seeing its posture differently. Camera angle shifted, and it looks bulkier. But whatever. Yes, I
But
basically agree
even
with
in the
you.
arms, though, look at the plating around the forearm on the two
Right.
of them. Like there's more carapace, and like the trident that they've historically carried is now not just a trident; it's a mercurial trident, and it looks a lot more like savage,
Yeah.
and in a way that is fitting for a creature of the lower planes, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, it looks more alien, and I do like that.
Yeah, I
Um,
enjoy that coming out of its mouth. It's not just like typical insectoid mandibles, but there's like little, I don't know, little claws coming out of the mouth, and then there's claws at the end of those claws instead of just the
yeah,
typical
yeah,
bug mandibles. It makes it look
yeah.
more demonic or whatever.
I mean, it's got sort of alien,
Yeah,
but xenomorph from Alien situation in that.
but
That
but two coming out of the sides of the mouth instead of one coming down the middle.
well, yeah, they got to avoid getting sued, man. Uh, I do really like the D6 table of Mesoloth payments, just as a thing. I think it's neat.
Yeah.
Um, it like it's probably in a lot of cases it's at most about one line of commentary, but it just grounds them in relationships.
Well,
And I
and that
always
that
go,
yeah, that table's all about like here are the different ways you can pay a Mesloth, which actually helps a lot because it's fairly well established that Yugoloths are the mercenaries of the Blood War, right? They're referred to that way a lot. Um, but what do you pay a mercenary in the Blood War for? Like a Mesoloth doesn't care about your coin. So what does it care about? And this is telling us a little bit about what it cares about. And it not only helps us understand how do you hire a Mesoloth if you need a CR5, Yugoloth fiend running around to help you out. Um, but it gives us a little bit of a beginnings of an insight as to what do the Yugoloths take for payment generally as mercenaries. I also enjoy that the pullout quote is from Mort from the Planescape Torment video game.
I mean, I'm on record in the Tome show as being a huge fan of Planescape Torment
Mm-hmm.
and Mort in particular.
Mm-hmm. It may be one of those things that I have purchased multiple times in different formats because they keep releasing it in
Uh,
different formats.
yeah, the more recent edition is so worth a fresh purchase and install because man, the UI is so much more friendly. It's still not your friend, but it's better.
I've got it on my iPad, and I replayed it there. And I don't like the UI there a ton, but the story makes
Yeah.
up for it. So
Yeah. Oh my God, such a fan. Um, so let's talk stats, I guess.
yeah,
Like we're holding the line on 18 AC, 75 hit points, and of course the damage resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, slashing from non-magic weapons is gone, but uh, it doesn't seem to have paid for that with its other defenses. It was
yeah.
kind of getting that for freebie, I guess.
Well, because
Um,
we were in other entries where we've seen creatures lose that resistance. We've seen them pick up extra hit points to make up for it.
which tells me that maybe someone was playing pretty fast and loose with a with the math in 2014.
That may be.
Um, then their innate spell casting has uh, held pretty steady, except that they've lost a use per day of darkness and dispel magic. And let me tell you, going from like that is a difference that is mostly not going to matter.
The dispel
Because
magic probably matters more than the darkness.
yes, that's probably true. Um, they do have that blindside 60 feet. That is a huge help in making that darkness be fun.
Yeah.
Right. Uh, but they should be spending their time with Cloud Kill primarily.
There's also a not insignificant change in their teleport ability. Like they could teleport more or less infinitely before.
Yeah. Remember that was a big demon thing also.
It took an action though, so it almost never came into play in my experience. Whereas now it's a bonus action, but it's a recharge, so they're not going to be doing it every round.
Yeah, and that's probably fine. Probably fine.
I find it interesting that they specifically call out in 2024 that they can teleport one creature that it's grappling as well, which was not called out before. But it's interesting that they would do that because do they have anything that grapples? Oh, they do now. Their claws grapple.
Yep.
So that makes sense. So in
They not
2014
only
it didn't.
grapple, but they automatically restrain. That's really good.
Yeah, which makes sense. Like if you look at how the Mesoloth is constructed, it makes sense that it could grapple on a hit, and that their
Yeah.
teleport allows them to drag you with it and then throw you
Yeah.
in the river Styx.
Yeah. In my campaign, there was a pretty great moment where Jeremiah McCoy's character uh, was standing in for his boss to be the appealing target. He was making himself bait. They're up against a Demodand, and I had to give it a trait like this so that the Demodand could escape with him after it captured him. Because the Demodand was supposed to be sort of a cosmic bounty hunter, but there wasn't enough in how that would work.
Yeah, the mechanics didn't support the stories very well.
Not very clearly because of the willing requirement for plane shift.
Right.
So that wound up being really cool, and I had to give the Demodand a magic item.
Nice. So did the Trident change anything besides his name? It does force
The
damage because that's
Trident
what.
Trident doesn't in 2014 doesn't come back on its own whether you hit or miss. The hit or miss, the Trident magically returns with Mesoloth's Claw immediately after a range attack. That's new.
Yeah. So it comes back and it does the extra force damage.
And that matters because multi attack now works on its range attack.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It just does two attacks, and one of the options is with the trident. So you could just throw the trident twice in one turn.
Yeah, and that's fine. But that's cool to me.
That's where,
Like,
but in terms of damage output, doing the extra 3d6 damage on that trident attack, being able to throw that trident twice in one turn, I can see where it is enough of a threat that maybe it doesn't need extra hit points to make up for the
yeah,
the lack of resistance.
maybe they did balance it to just be a more aggro and less defensive creature.
Yeah.
That's very possible. But like, there's also the fact that they were kind of learning their own system and what worked in actual play. Right?
I mean, in total, the new version of the Mesoloth, the stats make a more interesting encounter. The fact that I can use my claws and it grabs, and then I can use my teleport and take you with me. That trident is doing the more interesting things and more damage. Like the new version of the Mesoloth is a more interesting fight. It is not a more simple stat block, and a lot of 2024 has been moving to more simple, easy to run stat blocks. So I find that interesting that they arguably made it a little bit more complex with this grapple and teleport and bring you with them sort of thing. But it's a more interesting encounter fighting them now.
Yeah. And even if you were just going with claws to grapple and restrain, and then I beat you to death because you're restrained,
Mm-hmm.
and I have advantage on my attacks, and you have disadvantage to hit me. Good game. That's that's extremely effective. I do really like that.
And
I
honestly,
agree with you that this is like just a more exciting stat block to use.
mm-hmm. One of the things that I oftentimes found running Descent into Avernus is a lot of demons and devils, and I threw in my fair share of extra Yugoloths in there and whatever. Is that for these planes with massive armies, and the abyss is basically infinite with an infinite variety of demons in them and whatever. There's only a handful of stat blocks that you should throw at them, and they kind of get redundant pretty fast. After one or two encounters, it's like, okay, another bearded devil. We know how this works.
Oh, like that is incidentally also a significant problem in 4E, where there's tons of stat blocks for everything, but man, the demons wind up kind of getting pigeonholed.
Yeah,
Um,
but
they're
this
kind of all heavy brute dudes, and there's not even a ton of variation within heavy brute.
But this is a stat block that, like, I could run this Mesoloth, the 2024 Mesoloth, in 3 or 4 different ways to have very different encounters with the same stat block, and
That's right.
I like having that flexibility.
That's right.
So
Um, I've I've lately become really influenced. You can't do this in a lot of professional writing, but for my own stuff, I've become really influenced by 13th Age's nastier specials in their monster design. I just think that's a really cool idea for, hey, maybe this monster's starting to get a little stale. Maybe my PCs need a little reminding to be afraid of things. So just a lot of monsters have something sort of set at the very end of the stat block that is, here's a little lace up its sleeve. Just toss this at them if they get uppity. All right, there you go. So I think that's good for keeping stat blocks fresh if they get reused a lot.
Are we ready to move on to maybe one more tonight?
Sure.
Okay, then let's talk about mimics. We'll end tonight with an iconic mimic monster stat block, and then next time we will start with an iconic mind flayer.
Or is it only gonna pretend it's the last? Like we think it's the last.
We think it's the last, but it's really a monster that's trying to eat us.
That's a nice crate you got there. I'm sure it's totally fine.
Yeah.
No concerns about your crate.
For people who don't know, mimics are monsters that can imitate inanimate objects. And the classic mimic is, hey, you find a treasure chest, you go to loot it, and it takes a bite out of you. They got big, giant, adhesive tongues that loll out and grab you and drag you into its maw. They are almost always depicted as treasure chests. But has been in the stat block for a mimic for a very, very long time that they can take a lot of forms. Just the treasure chest is sort of the iconic, and this is the first, I think, Monster Manual artwork 2024 that I've seen that is just explicitly showing mimics as it. You have our treasure chest mimic there, but you have a lot of other mimics in that room too. You got a barrel, you got a chair, you got a bottle, you got a painting. I would argue that it's possible that whole room is a mimic because that doorway looks an awful lot like the mouth of a mimic.
I would argue that maybe no monster has caught on in other games as much as a mimic.
Oh,
No monster that originated from Gygax and D&D. Like, I think Beholders and Mind Flayers and Owlbears are sort of the whole list of the competition for
okay,
things that don't have their origin in some other
right.
really specific myth.
That aren't like
Right?
orcs or whatever.
Well, orcs, goblins, fine. That's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
But
things that
the really
started in D&D.
Gygaxian stuff, right? Man, mimics have some cultural penetration. I was playing a game called Death's Door the other day. It's like, oh yeah, there's the mimic encounter. Cool. And it's a recurring thing. It's in every Dark Souls game. Like, just the cultural penetration on mimics is ridiculous.
I'm surprised mimics didn't show up in the 12 Days of Edition Wars in one of those monsters.
Uh, we're keeping our powder dry for future years.
There you go. Yeah, because there's a lot of interest. And it's interesting to me. Like, I have run old school adventures that might have been from second edition or whatever, where there were mimics in it that would like speak to you. And
Yep.
I'm noticing that these mimics don't have language, and I don't know at what point in time or in what edition if something happened where they started with language and then they lost it over time.
Oh, weird. Certainly in like the most memorable mimic encounter I've ever had was a talking mimic that we wound up making friends with and calling Chester Drawer.
Perfect. So how have the mimics changed? Same AC, same hit points, same. No, they're faster now.
I mean, okay. I'm sure that is going to super matter.
I mean, at least at 20 feet, they can keep up with the party halfling.
Party halfling moves at 30 feet, bud.
Oh, darn. They didn't used to.
They didn't used to, but shorties don't take speed hits anymore. They got rid of that. So, I mean, the core mimic combat story can't change.
Right.
They absolutely cannot move on that. I think that arguably they might need a different mimic stat block for different configurations of mimic. Like a door should maybe work differently than
Yes.
a chest, right? Or there should be we kind of need a size scaler because we've seen stat blocks for this house is a mimic, right? And it's CR something in the teens probably. But no, I mean the core of this thing isn't really allowed to change.
I find it interesting. The new version, though, describes them having a true form that looks like kind of a blob, and then they change into different things. Like they've long had the ability to shapeshift or shape change or whatever. But does it describe their true form as being a blob in other areas? I guess 2014 just describes an amorphous form. I suppose that's blob-like.
Whatever you want that to mean.
But I'm thinking of there's a mimic in what's the kid stories that we read, Tracy? Like the Adventuring Academy or whatever it was.
Dungeon Academy.
Dungeon Academy. Yeah, and there's a mimic character in Dungeon Academy who, like, so far as we know, its true form is just in the form of a book, because it's always a book. It doesn't like change into a blob or amorphous form at any point in time.
I mean, one of my favorite presentations of mimics and sort of Gygaxian dungeon ecology monsters in general is Naomi Novik's Skullomance series, where that's the kind of monster that there is for the most part, just different, like magical blobs that turn themselves into things that sort of make sense in the environment. So lurkers above and cloakers and cloakers. It looks like a cloak hanging on a wall for real. Chests, all that kind of stuff. Piercers. Anyway, that's a great book series for making some sense of Gygaxian dungeon ecology monsters and trying to center them in a narrative.
There you go. I'm trying to go through. Has their attacks changed at all? I mean, it's still a pseudopod and a bite. The bite used to do 7 and 5, 7 and 4. Now it does 7 and 4 or 12. Oh, if it's grappled.
Does a lot of damage if it's grappled. Yeah.
Does extra damage if you're grappling. Yep. And it grapples. Does it grapple with the tongue? Yeah. Or with a pseudopod.
Pseudopod.
Sorry. But it's always depicted as a tongue.
Yeah.
So mechanically, they're more or less the same. They lost the grappler feature and they lost false appearance. But now they just sort of grapple automatically.
But they lost the grappler feature, but they got a huge damage kicker while they're grappling. So, okay,
Well, and
so grappler would do a lot less because we don't do contested checks.
The grappler feature gives it advantage on attack rolls against grappled creatures. In exchange, it now grapples automatically with the pseudopod, and ability checks to escape its grapple automatically have disadvantage.
Oh, and it does gain advantage on its bite attack if the target is grappled. So
yeah,
it got shuffled into the bite attack.
It got shuffled in. Now the false appearance didn't get shuffled, but like they've
been getting rid of false appearance left, right, and center.
They are, but boy, does it make a ton of sense. Like, and this one didn't even it didn't gain stealth. Like, it's clear that this is how mimics work, to just look like inanimate objects until it's too late. But the mechanics don't necessarily tell that story as much anymore.
Well, I mean, Shapeshift is trying to do the job. They kind of need to explain a unique stealth versus perception loop for the mimic, because it doesn't need to hide behind something to hide. It needs to change its appearance to hide.
Right.
It's always choosing to hide in plain sight. And they kind of need to solidify that with some kind of, here's how you use stealth here. It doesn't have any of the normal requirements for stealth.
And it does shape shifts faster than it used to shape change. It was an action to shape change in 5, and now it's a bonus action to shape shift. So It can pop around into different form every single round.
Which only really helps if you're losing line of sight to it
right.
and don't see its new shape. If it's shape shifting into something that's easily lost in a big pile of thing, needle and haystack, then okay, but it has to stay medium size, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or medium or small,
Medium or small?
but still not tiny.
Nope. There's some interesting things to do there, but boy, at their slow speed, it's hard for them to get out of line of sight.
Right, for sure.
So.
You would need to have another NPC with them to help with that, like someone who can drop darkness or something.
Mm-hmm.
So Mezzaloth.
But there you go. But what happens now is if there's a mimic in the room, the PCs always have a chance to figure out that that's a mimic. Whereas before, because of false appearance, you don't even get a roll. It just looks like the object with no roll, and you can't perceive it until it's too late. So it makes it a less effective ambusher now because it has the same stealth that it had before. So it's going to be rolling a stealth +5 versus the perception checks of an entire party. Somebody's almost certainly going to notice that that's a mimic.
I mean, maybe. I think there's a lack of clarity on the, like I was saying, the stealth versus perception loop for this. Like, at what point do you have enough of a reason to decide to roll?
Right.
Like, shapeshift works. Shapeshift does what it says it does. Right? Which is, it shifts to resemble. Well, whatever whatever level of resemblance resemble means.
Yeah, there's some room for interpretation there. So I don't know that it's telling exactly the same story by default. Now, for you and I, it definitely does, because
we know what mimics are supposed to do, right?
Our mimics are going to work the way mimics work, So.
And any of our listeners who will be inspired by us to use mimics for things. But
absolutely.
I love a lot of the sort of weirder corner stuff that D&D and third-party creators and such have done with mimics over the years.
Mm-hmm.
There's the mimic colony that shows up in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, that kind of stuff.
I can't even remember what the adventure was that I was thinking about, but there's an adventure where the mimic took the form of a step, like down to a well in a dungeon. And so the PCs wouldn't think anything of it. And so they're just walking along, going down to that well, and they step on the mimic, and now they're stuck.
Jerks.
I thought that was a clever one. So,
yeah, that's good.
In any case, I think we've hit mimics.
Yep.
So I'm going to make a note that we will start talking about mind flayers next time we record, and call that the end of this episode. I want to wish Jared the best and hope that he gets his power back without any major calamities. And thank Brandes for joining us. Brandes, if people want to find more of you, where can they go?
Well, you can find me on the Tome Show Discord. You can find my writing at brandesstoddard.com. My Patreon is Brandes Stoddard. And on Blue Sky, I am brandesstoddard.bsky.social.
Perfect. I also want to thank everyone who supports us by being patrons over at patreon.com/The Tome Show. Your support helps me pay the bills, and that helps make the show possible. And I'm going to give a shout out here, a special thanks to some of our higher tier supporters: Doug Palmer, Hyper Lexic, Trash Panda, Michael Harrison, and a couple of new patrons that we've gotten in. I think the episode 400 that we put out a little while ago is garnering some extra support. So we have new patrons, including Sassy Boy 55 and Timothy Gutierrez. So thank you to the new patrons for joining in and helping support the show. For as little as $1 a month, you can also join them and help me pay the bills and keep the show growing. Today is our first episode of me trying out a new mic to see if it fixes some of the issues that Stan was having trying to make me sound decent. So there's only so much to be done because, unfortunately, I am a bit of an ogre. So All right. So,
but
and in theory,
you can get the tool and become a marrow. Right.
That's right. In theory, it'll also help us stream on a couple of both Twitch and YouTube is what I'm working on. But and we were going to try to play around with it and do that tonight, but there were some technical hiccups. So here we are.
And then if you'd like to contact us, you can send email thetomeshow@gmail.com. You can find us on social medias. I'm usually Sarah Dark Magic, that's Sarah with an H, and Jeff is Squatch, SQUACH.
And that is episode 403, where we marched down mercantile miscreants and met Methuselah as we discuss the Monster Manual for the 23rd time. In this episode of
The Tome.
I'm on the wall.